Hey, so I want to talk to you about something that still surprises me. Even though I have tested this deliberately over 4 years, and it's why I don't gain weight anymore. Not on vacation, not visiting my family in England, not when my routine changes, not when I'm eating foods that I wouldn't normally eat. Not when my calories clearly go up. Ah, and before anyone makes any assumptions about this, I want to be really clear about that. It's not because I don't get weight. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about something today that still surprises me, even though I've been testing this for about 4 years now, and it's why I don't gain weight. Not when I'm on vacation, not when I'm visiting my family in England, my routine changes, not when I'm eating food that used to absolutely cause me to gain weight, not when my calories clearly go to beyond what I actually need. Um, and in many situations, especially when I travel, I probably eat more. You know, my routine has usually shifted and just generally off track. Now, what that would usually mean to me, say a week's vacation or say a family trip back to England, that could usually equate from anywhere between 3 and 5 pounds. Um, and I could get rid of it, but it was kind of annoying. I'd get off the flight and I'd be like, oh my gosh, here we go, a little bit of catch up to play. But since I've been taking the 5 amino 1 MQ, I do not gain weight. And if you saw, I might have seen my short on YouTube or on Instagram, something or other, where I film myself. So what I do is if I know I'm going away, before I go away, I get on the scale and I have a picture of that. And then when I come back from vacation, I get back on the scale. And I've got one of those old-fashioned scales, the calibrated ones that you step on and you move it across. And so before I go away, I get on the scale, set it, and I leave it for my weight. So when I get back from vacation, I get straight back on the scale and I see if it's moved at all. And it doesn't. And it doesn't. So I have done little shorts on this saying, hey, like, hey, look at me, I'm the same weight, and you might have seen those, but I felt like I needed to do a video to explain this properly because this isn't a mindset thing, it's not a magic thing, it's not a like, oh, look at me. This is a fat physiology thing. And for most of our lives, we're taught a very simple model. And the model would be if we eat too much, we gain weight. If we eat less, we lose weight. And that model feels especially unforgiving when you get a little bit older. You travel, you sleep less, you eat differently, routine changes. And historically, that environment almost guarantees weight gain. Um, I mean, that has certainly been my experience in the past. So, a trip for me would usually be a week trip is a good 3 to 4 pounds. Day 10 days in England could be a legit 4 or 5 pounds for me usually. So when that stopped happening, I had to ask myself, how to explain this. I mean, what has changed? And this was when I got involved with 5-amino 1-MQ. Excuse me, my throat. I read a blog post on peptide science all about it, and I distinctly remember in that blog post, and it said inhibits lipogenesis even in a calorie surplus, and I'm like, what? Inhibits weight gain even in a calorie surplus. And that's when I bought some more peptide science. And I'm like, I'm going to test this theory. And I did the first time I tested it. I think I think it was in the summer. So I think it was a couple of trips to England and then to California. My mom was really sick. She was dying. So there was a lot of trips back and forth. And training was way off. Food was way off. Everything was very chaotic. Came back, even then went to California for a while with my husband, met some friends, completely off. And I get on the scale and I'm the same weight. In fact, I think I was a quarter pound down. And I'm like, that's bizarre. And I'm like, okay. So over the course of the last 4 years, there's probably been a dozen times, 10, 12 times I've tested this theory where I've gone away and I've deliberately paid attention to this and I simply don't gain weight. So what has changed? I mean, it obviously works. So I was using peptide science just for 3 months, and then I sourced my own brand, and this is what I've been using ever since. You can go to 5amino.com. But what has changed is how my fat cells behave. And to understand this, we need to be really honest about something people misunderstand. The thought is that fat storage is automatic. It's not passive. It's just, you know, extra calories go to fat. And that's simply not the case because fat storage is a program that has to be turned on. So when you eat calories, they enter the bloodstream. Insulin does what it's meant to do. It allows nutrients into the cell. Mhm. But for fat to actually be created and stored, fat cells must activate a very specific set of enzymes and genes. These enzymes and genes have to turn on lipogenesis or lipogenesis, the creation of new fat, the process of converting the incoming calories, energy, into stored fat. And that process requires enzymes, it requires signaling pathways, and obviously it requires energy. So, in other words, fat cells have to be metabolically willing to store. And that willingness changes over time. Inside fat cells is an enzyme that almost nobody talks about outside of research, but it matters enormously. And that enzyme, you've heard me talk about it, NNMT. So NNMT is one of the key reasons that fat gain feels so different in midlife compared to when we were, say, in our 20s. When NNMT activity is high, fat cells become very good at storing energy and very bad at processing it. So NNMT suppresses mitochondrial activity inside the fat cell. NNMT lowers NAD plus availability, and I'm going to do a separate video on NAD plus and body composition. I'll probably film it after this one. And NNMT, it shifts the cell towards storage mode rather than oxidation mode. So importantly, NNMT actively increases with age. NNMT increases with chronic diet. It's high in people with insulin resistance. It's high in people with a history of weight cycling. And this is one of the reasons that people say, excuse me, especially in midlife, I eat the same thing, but I'm gaining weight and my body, I'm just not losing it. It's just stuck, and everything I'm doing before it doesn't work anymore. Because the body is responding differently now because of that increase in NNMT. So they're not making it up. I mean, the body is responding differently. The cells themselves are different. So this is where 5-amino-1-MQ comes in. And this is the part that matters. So 5-amino-1-MQ inhibits NNMT, and that's it. That's the only thing it does. It's a molecule. It does one thing. It inhibits NNMT. That's the mechanism. That's what it does. One thing. It's not complicated, but the downstream effects of that one action are profound. When NNMT is inhibited, fat cells stop draining NAD plus. NAD plus levels rise inside the cell. And, NAD plus is always linked to energy, but it's not just an energy molecule. NAD plus determines what a cell is capable of doing. So if there is low NAD plus, so NAD plus depletes with age anyway. So generally, as people get older, lower NAD plus, and it makes the cells kind of default to storage. When you have high NAD plus or higher, optimal, let's say NAD plus, cells can process, they can oxidize, they can move energy through the system. And this is the first major shift. The second shift is even more important. And now I'm talking about lipogenesis. So in my coaching programs, I'm always talking about lipolysis, which is a breakdown of fat. So lipolysis, the breakdown of fat, lipogenesis is the creation of new fat. The creation of new fat, and this is not just about having calories available. It requires the activation of specific enzymes and genes. When NNMT is inhibited, as it is with 5-amino, those lipogenesis pathways are downregulated, and that's important. The machinery required to turn incoming energy into stored fat is turned down. So calories can still enter the cell, and that hasn't changed. And glucose can still be present. That hasn't changed. Insulin can still be responding to that glucose in its normal fashion, but the factory that builds new fat is no longer operating at full capacity. This is when people get confused and think something's breaking the rules. Nothing breaks the rules. The rules were just never as simple as we were told. We were told excess calories, stored fat. But that rule is very flawed because there's a process necessary. There are steps, enzymes, genes that are required. There's a pathway required for those excess calories to be stored as fat. And what if that pathways or those pathways are inhibited? There's a third effect that matters just as much. Just as storing fat isn't as simple as we're told, fat gain doesn't just come from filling up fat cells. It comes from allowing the fat cell to expand. With NNMT inhibited, fat cells become resistant to hypertrophy. So hypertrophy, we think of hypertrophy in muscles and we think of as growth. Well, there can be hypertrophy in a fat cell. And if we can inhibit the ability for the fat cell, or not inhibit, let's just say the fat cells become very resistant to hypertrophy, to getting bigger. Well, when we gain fat, we don't gain new fat cells. We just expand the ones we have. And when we're inhibiting NNMT, that expansion becomes metabolically expensive. And when fat storage becomes expensive, the body avoids doing it wherever possible. And this is kind of a critical point. So I want to say it really clearly. 5-amino 1-MQ does not aggressively burn fat. It makes fat storage very inefficient, and the body doesn't want to do anything which is metabolically expensive. So the obvious question becomes, if calories aren't going into fat, where are they going? Because you're still eating them, Joanne. They don't disappear. They don't disappear. They are redirected, and this is the key to it. We think excess calories, fat storage. It's not. There's other places that fat can go. Obviously, there is, because we see kids running around eating excess calories and they don't get fat. Maybe ourselves in our 20s and we were eating a bunch of nonsense and it didn't convert into fat. But as we get older, it does convert into fat. So what changed? Redirection. So I'm not gaining weight with all these trips. Not because those excess calories disappeared, not because they didn't enter my body, but because they are redirected. So, where did they go? Muscle glycogen is restored a lot more easily. Muscle repair and recovery time improved. Thermogenesis increases. So thermogenesis is the heat that's created. Now, another example of that is people get all stressed out because maybe they, have a really big meal on Christmas Day and it's all going to get converted to fat. Oh, I'm going to get, and they don't, right? The body has an ability, it has a choice. So if you have one huge meal, there's not like some internal abacus, in your body that's like, oh, well, you know what, you ate that, off they go into storage. And so in the case of somebody has they're pretty healthy person, they eat a really big fun meal. And the first thing the body's going to do is like, wow, that's a lot of calories coming in at once. I need to get rid of them, and the person will get hot and they'll be sitting at the dining table and they might get a bit sweaty, or the core temperature definitely goes up. This is thermogenesis. Well, with 5-amino inhibiting NNMT, those excess calories I was eating, they just got redirected, pulled into the muscle more easily, reparation of my muscle after my training, vastly improved with 5-amino. That's requires its own separate video. And thermogenesis increases. The body burns off the extra calories in heat rather than storing them. It has that choice. Overall mitochondrial output rises. Muscle becomes the preferred sink for energy, especially if you train and eat enough protein. So this is why calorie surpluses start behaving quite differently. They stop automatically becoming fat gain, and this is also why this effect shows up most clearly on vacation, because vacation, is a surplus. Well, for me, it can be a surplus environment. I mean, historically, that surplus goes straight to fat. But when fat storage pathways are suppressed and muscle and oxidation pathways dominate, the outcome changes completely. Um, I mean, you might see water fluctuations. You may see scale noise, but actual fat gain, doesn't materialize the way it used to. And that's why, I seem to be able to travel, enjoy food, come home, and look the same. Not because, I restricted when I was away, not because, just because things changed. Not willpower, not discipline. This is fat cells operating under a different metabolic instruction set. Now, what's super interesting, that I get all this. I knew all this. I knew this is what 5-amino did. And still, I still get a kick out of it when it proves it over and over again. And the most recent trip, Kevin came back, my husband, and he's like, wow, I didn't gain a pound. And I'm like, well, you've been taking 5-amino, right? And he said, yeah, I've been taking it. I'm like, well, there you go. And this is a guy that can put 10 pounds on over a weekend. Now, what's also the part that I can't explain as well is this. The weight gain, no fat gain, I understand that. I got it. This is why I'm so committed to this, so committed. One of the reasons I'm so committed to this product. And it drops fat. My weight came down when I first started taking it by a good 7 or 8 pounds. I've got to the weight I want to be, and I just stay there. I've been 138 for seemingly ever. But this is the thing. So I'll fly to Europe. That takes me, 3 flights from Boise. Usually, I wouldn't dream of getting on a scale for at least 3 or 4 days after those flights. I mean, that's just going to be sitting for that long, water retention, all the rest of it. And yet, the last 3 or 4 times, I've literally got home, and the very next morning, bun on head, in my underwear, I've got on the scale straight away. And I've posted those videos as well. They're not attractive. And you can find them in the shorts in YouTube, and you can find them on Instagram. where I'd literally filmed myself the very next morning. The first thing I do, I'm getting on the scale. I would never have done that. And that just shocked me that I get on the scale and I'm the same weight. We just came back from a week in Mexico. I averaged, I think, 4 spicy margaritas a day. I don't necessarily overeat there, but different foods, tacos, and all the rest. No training whatsoever. And it took us a long time to get back. We had to go randomly to this other airport. It was almost like coming back from Europe, coming back from Mexico. And then got on the scale the next day. The videos are right there in the shorts. And I was exactly the same weight. So I'm going to do a video. The next video is going to be on, I'll talk about NAD plus and its role with it. It's also the energy thing, but let's talk about with regards to body composition because that's important. And then I will do a video also comparing the 5 amino to the weight loss medications because I just want to explain how they work differently. One of them works upstream and one of them works downstream. So they're very, very different. So I'll save that for another video. But for right now, why the 5 amino after yet and again, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Kevin's birthday, and a week in Mexico, and my weight remained the same.